And let's get started. Hi, everybody. I know a lot of you already, I'm sure. My name is Dr. Jeff Norman. I am a practicing chiropractic physician in the state of Utah. I had essentially partially retired from practice. And I was here in St. George. I was consulting with some companies back east. I was traveling a lot. I was teaching a number of different things, and I've had the blessing to have time to write a few books, and there's usually two or three, at least one or two things in there that are of value. So it's given me the opportunity to speak, and I've loved that. 12 years ago, I received a kidney from my sister, a kidney transplant, and hence the ovary I talked about earlier. I'm pretty sure I got one of her ovaries as well, and we've had that discussion, you guys know. So the important part is that the medications that were prescribed to me to keep that graft, that kidney transplant, alive and well inside of me, comes with multiple pages of side effects, from everything from skin cancer to death of the kidney. One of the things that became very apparent to me was that it was causing neuropathy in my own feet, and it was murderous. It was ruining my life. It was taking me out of the game. I was watching it go by. My wife, we're down here in this beautiful area, and she'd say, let's go for a hike. And I'd say, no way, because you and I go for a hike and it'll be miserable, and then I'll suffer all night long. And so we weren't hiking, we weren't golfing, we weren't walking, we weren't doing anything. And so it became a necessity for me to really figure out what this neuropathy thing was. And I have a lot of friends across the nation who I had dealt with, who were doing a lot of work with it. So that's where it all came to be. And so as a result, by the time it all came to be about, I'm now board certified in neuropathy. I've written a book about neuropathy that we use with our patients. So what I want to do is we're going to dive into this thing. I want to just bring you up to snuff as much as I can about neuropathy. I call it the beast that we call neuropathy, and that's what I call it in the book, because it truly can be a beast. It was ruining my life. Now, when we have people in here, when we start with new people, we like to ask this question, and that is, what have you been told? What has your doctor told you? And most of you out there who have neuropathy or have someone you love who has neuropathy, this is what they've been told. Doc, can it get better? Is there anything I can do? And the answer is no. There's nothing that can be done about neuropathy. The best we can hope for is, let's give you some medications that are going to help cover up the pain and pray that it doesn't get any. To me, it just seems like pray that you'll die before you have to have an amputation. So that's what we're up against in this world of neuropathy. But when your patients come into you and you discover that they have this, I hope that what we go through tonight is going to empower you enough that you can step in and start making some changes in their lives.
My symptoms related to bad balance, which I'm sure generated from the neuropathy that I have in my feet and lower legs. I was tripping and had a lot of concern about my well-being to walk. We came to the little seminar, got a bunch of information and some evaluation, testing, etc. I think maybe I was skeptical, but I was also confident on what I heard. I decided that at my age, if I'm going to move on in life, I need to feel a little better. And, you might as well spend the money now, because if you don't, you're going to be a basket case. So, ready to go. Happy to do it. My results are almost immeasurable. I used to have what felt like shells or some crusts on the bottom of my feet. They weren't really there, but that was a feeling I had. And that was the reason why I always had balance problems and tripping and so on. I would say 80% of that is gone. I definitely see results, and I will be continuing. I don't want to be the old guy that can't walk.
So that's just one of our many videos that we have that we've had patients make for us. Now, what's interesting to note is Ron was a skeptic. He was a pain in the backside. In fact, I had to use a curse word at him, and that he recorded that video for us when he was 90 days into a program. So we took a man who was having all kinds of problems. He lived the way we asked him to live and did what we asked him to do, and in 90 days he was 80% improved. Um, and we still keep in touch with him as he's moved away even now. So that's what really can be done, and we do that here in our clinic every single day. And we take pictures with our patients and put them on the wall, and we take videos because that helps other people see that there really is something to what we're saying. So let's back up and talk a little bit about what neuropathy really is. Neuropathy, for those of you who haven't had a little brush up for a while, it's really not specific. It just says that you have damage to a nerve in the peripheral nervous system. Now, it can be a mononeuropathy, it can be a polyneuropathy. Now, a good mononeuropathy example is a carpal tunnel syndrome. It's a single nerve, it's a median nerve, it's being damaged, and there are ways to approach that. A polyneuropathy is simply that there are multiple nerves involved. Now, the most common form of polyneuropathy is what we call this peripheral neuropathy that is in this nice, neat little box that we have. It usually starts in the feet, is felt in the hands. It can affect, now this is important to know, that it can affect sensory nerves first, obviously, because when they're misbehaving, we get all the symptoms, but we also begin to have damage to what we're supposed to be feeling. So sensory nerves are damaged, motor nerves become damaged, and when that occurs, we start to lose our balance, we get coordination problems, and we start having more things like muscle cramps and that kind of an issue. And the thing that most doctors don't realize is that peripheral neuropathy, the same situation that we're talking about through this whole hour tonight, is it can affect your autonomic nervous system. So we have patients coming into our office who have all kinds of issues beyond the normal symptoms. For example, with the ladies, and it's degrading, we'll have ladies come in and they not only do they have urine leakage, they have absolutely no ability to hold on to enough urine to even have a normal urinary experience. So they wear diapers because as soon as their kidneys micturate, as soon as they make urine, it goes right down and exits out all by itself. And neuropathy has caused that kind of a damage. The men, because we have some extra sphincters along the way, we don't notice that as much, but what we see among the men is erectile dysfunction, which is something that nobody ever really wants to talk about, but it's a very real deal. The exciting thing with our patients, and this is kind of a funny thing between men and women, the ladies will come in, our restrooms are right outside the back door in our building, the exit door into a hallway. And they'll come in and they'll slam the door and raise their arms and say, "I just peed." And the whole group erupts for them. The men, when things go better for them, they don't share that with everybody. They just whisper it to me. So keep in mind, polyneuropathy, this peripheral neuropathy, affects sensory, motor, and autonomic nerves. So we're talking bladder, sex organs, kidneys, heart. It is considered the #1 cause of a silent heart attack. No symptoms, no signs, we just keel over. And it's because the autonomic nerves have been damaged trying to keep that thing functioning. All right. Many potential causes with neuropathy. Now, we read in many of the things that we see, many of the sources, that there are over 100 causes of peripheral neuropathy. Now, I've never been able to count 100 different ones, but I know that there's many out there. So diabetes, for example, is the one that everybody thinks about, but poor circulation, toxic exposure. One of my patients was actually a toxic soil investigator at nuclear sites. And I said, "Do you suppose that walking through all that corrupted soil might have anything to do with your neuropathy?" He was like, "Absolutely." So that's another one. Infections, alcohol, post-surgical, and it doesn't have to be in the feet. There are things that happen in the body when there's a traumatic experience that will trigger something else, and we don't really understand why it can trigger the peripheral neuropathy to have a traumatic experience, like a car crash, but it happens. Post-surgical, I said that one. Liver failure, autoimmune diseases, which makes a lot of sense the deeper into this you get. But one of the biggest causers that are out there that nobody stops to think about is medications. Now, in the book, you're going to see a lot of classification. We're going to talk a lot about that, but we see some common ones that we'll talk about in a few minutes that are a big deal. Now, for some reason, back and neck trauma are linked in there. When you go through your coursework, you're going to learn that 60% of all people with neuropathy have back pain. And I thought, well, that's kind of a stupid statistic because if you Google how many Americans have back pain, it's like 62%. So I'm not so sure that all these statistics come together very nicely. One of the things that we didn't put on this slide was that chemotherapy is a big producer of neuropathy. About 50% of people who go through chemotherapy are going to end up with some form of neuropathy through that. Here are just some of the symptoms that you're going to see. Now, interesting to note that no two people with neuropathy have the same symptoms. We are currently working with 3 sisters from the Cache Valley area. 3 sisters, they all have peripheral neuropathy. They all started the same week with us. They're all doing great, but not any one of those 3 has any kind of the same symptoms. So there's a numbness and there's a tingling, a burning pain. For me, the lightning bolts were shooting through my feet, cold sensation, a hot sensation, aching pain, stabbing. You can read through all of these, and I think we have a couple of them twice. Tingling's up there twice, I guess, because it's super important. Hypersensitivity comes along. The inability to have the bed sheets even rest against your feet is not uncommon. I slept with my feet hanging out of the bottom of the bed for 2 years. And my wife is shorter than I am. She likes those covers tucked in deep, and I would untuck my side. So she invented a new sheet. When she buys sheets for us, she takes the top sheet and she cuts it up the middle about 2.5 feet and then hems it. So her side can stay tucked nice and deep and my side can be untucked. And it's just the way we live still. But there's cramping, electric shocks, balance problems, coordination issues, discoloration. There are times when the neuropathy gets so bad that the nerves that are trying to feed the skin can't function and the skin gets very thin, almost transparent. It's shiny and it's very tight. So we see it in all kinds. You can sometimes just see the cracking and dryness and scaling of the skin that the neuropathy can cause. So lots and lots of symptoms. And don't get locked into the fact that since this person didn't present with the basic normal ones, that they must not have neuropathy. One of the stories that I tell in the book is one of our patients who is a flight attendant. She was in her mid-60s, I believe. She said to me, I don't have any pain. I don't have any tingling. I don't have any bad symptoms at all. But I'm a flight attendant and I want to work another decade. I want to work till I'm 75. And she loves her job. But she said, my feet are funny. I can't feel them under me like I thought I should. So we did the examination, and during the examination, tears started to well up because she couldn't feel much of what we were testing her feet. And we can show you and teach you how to do this exam. But she ended up with, in the calculations, 55% damage in one foot and 62% damage in the other. She had lost that much of her ability to sense. So she jumped on the program, and within 90 days, she was down to 7% loss and 14% loss, and then continued on till she was completely better. So this is an exciting thing you can do, and it doesn't take board certification to be able to pull this off. Reversing neuropathy, you've got to understand some statistics that are very important. We have 24 million Americans that have neuropathy, and that's about just under 10% of all adults in America have neuropathy. If you go to, you skew the ages a little bit, 40% of the people over the age of 65 have some form of peripheral neuropathy. So we're talking about a very dense population of people that deal with enough health issues as it is. Diabetes is the #1 cause. However, it's only about 20% of all cases. And when you think about this, diabetes is an issue anyway. 51% of our country, 51% of the people in our country are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. We're seeing type 2 diabetes in children as young as 6. It's a lifestyle disease. And the food sources that we're encouraged to eat are just getting worse and worse. And we'll talk a little bit more about those things later. 30% of the cases that come in are considered idiopathic. We just can't trace down why they have neuropathy, and I hate that. I hate that when I can't figure out exactly why they've got some neuropathy. And I was taught in school that idiopathic means that the doctor's an idiot and the patient's pathetic. And I never feel good being the idiot that's involved in that part. If you forget all the statistics that we've listed here and you remember one only, this is the one I want you to remember. And that is 86%, and I'll back up, 86,000 amputations in this country because of neuropathy every year. So it often starts with just a toe or two or three. And then as it damages further, they take a little bit more of the foot. And then they take a little bit more of the foot until the whole foot's gone or even more. And we're talking 235 amputations per day in this country, people having something cut off and thrown in the medical trash. And I think that is disgraceful because most of that is preventable. And you're going to see tonight why. Interesting fact as well, major amputations like the foot, a little bit further up, 40% of those people attempt suicide within the first 12 months, and the average lifespan after those amputations is only 2 years. One more thing that I think is interesting here is that Medicare, who is the insurance for most of these people who have these illnesses, this is when you put that diagnosis down, this is what they like to pay for. They like to pay for the medications that cover up the symptoms in some people, but in all of them, they make the situation worse. We'll cover that a little bit more later. I hope I haven't passed that. If not, I'll back up. The other thing they'll pay for is they're happy to pay for the walkers. They're happy to pay for the canes. They're happy to pay for the wheelchairs that people have to get into, but they don't pay for the remodeling of your home to accommodate that wheelchair. And the last and most ridiculous thing is once the amputations begin, they will pay for those amputations up to 3. They won't pay for the 4th. So if you're going to get it cut off, I guess you just got to get a lot cut off right out of the gate if you want to be covered in your insurance with Medicare. This is what I wanted to talk about. These are the drugs, the major classifications of drugs that actually make neuropathy worse. Okay, anti-seizure medications, and the first front line of prescriptions that people are given for neuropathy and many other things, by the way, these days for pain are gabapentin, Lyrica, that kind of an idea. Those are both anti-seizure medications. They're designed to just block that signal from where else in the body up into the brain, and they actually make this thing worse. So people start on the medications. About 50% of them, according to literature, will get some symptom relief, and then before long they have to double down and take more of those medications because the situation has also actually gotten worse. So if the patients coming in here aren't on gabapentin and Lyrica, they're usually on something like an anti-anxiety drug like duloxetine. Those are probably the 3 most common ones that I see: antidepressants and the anxiety anti-seizure meds. They're just big, horrible band-aids, and they worsen the situation. They don't even stop it from getting worse. They make it worse. But there's others that are involved in their antibiotics, chemotherapy, like we talked about earlier, proton pump inhibitors. More than half your patients are probably taking omeprazole because of the diet of our countries, and you all know how to work with that and what a mess that is. But generally, the proton pump inhibitors, it's because of B vitamin deficiency that they cause. Statin drugs is one of the biggies as well. And how many of your patients are taking statin drugs? In that age class, virtually all of them. And it's just for diabetes, for kidney disease like I had, for heart disease, the first line of defense is they just put you on statins, whether your cholesterol is elevated or not. When we get to that point, I want you to realize that the myelin sheath that's being damaged and aiding in this problem is made up of almost entirely fat and cholesterol. So as soon as you start taking those statin drugs, you're damaging those nerves. Diabetes medications, really, metformin is the one that's the big damager in there. Metformin alone will increase your chances of neuropathy by 84%. So metformin is a biggie. A lot of those others, we haven't found that they're causing that problem yet. Blood sugar, blood pressure. It's the end of a long week. Blood pressure medications are big culprits for driving neuropathy. Dental creams that aren't used as often anymore, like Polygrip and Fixodent, and immunosuppressant drugs. A lot of autoimmune diseases out there for myself with the kidney transplant. Tacrolimus is the drug that I take, and it's notorious for causing terrible neuropathy. So when someone comes into us, as a side note, we try and find every single angle we can. What might be driving the neuropathy? What things can we eliminate? What things can we not? Now, one thing we won't do in our office is take people off their medications. We'll educate them about them, but what we will say is this is what we're up against. This is what we have to get ahead of. And I just come right out and say, look, many of your medications you may never be off, even though I might think that they should be off of all of them or some of them. But in my own case, if I stop taking that immunosuppressant drug, that tacrolimus, and I ever do need another kidney transplant, they won't give me one because I'll be branded as a troublemaker, as a non-compliant patient. So that's another game altogether. So look at medications. The book has a pretty good list in there in what drugs are in these classifications that you can work from. Once you start to get, here's the thing we encourage our patients to do. Go home, get on Google, and just put in the name of the drug, 2 more words, cause neuropathy. And that new AI search engine that Google has is beautiful. For most drugs, it doesn't make you read a whole bunch of information. It comes up with the word yes or no, and then a brief explanation, and then you can read more if you like. And I love that because there's some drugs come in here that I'm not familiar with, and I'll jump on, not only find out what they're for, but I will say cause neuropathy, yes, no. And it's patients love that because they start seeing with their own eyes. It's just not the crazy chiropractor that's telling them this thing is bad for them and that it's driving the neuropathy. So that's one important aspect. So what's really happening? Now, I know you guys know this stuff. The top nerve there is a happy, healthy nerve. We've got the axon going through here. These jelly rolls, I think they look like vanilla Tootsie Rolls. That is the myelin sheath. And as you know, it not only insulates the nerve, but it also has a chemical reaction that drives up the energy of the nerve so we can make the jump to the next Tootsie Roll. And then it drives up the energy, makes the jump to the next Tootsie Roll. A good, healthy nerve has very smooth and nice looking Tootsie Rolls. What are we talking about here? The myelin sheath. And it has a lot of micro, tiny capillaries there alongside to feed it. It's important to note that little things that help people understand this stuff, much like blood to a nerve is like water to a plant. What happens if we don't water the plant? People go, oh, it dries up, it dies. Yes, it does. Same thing happens with a nerve. So as your nerves go down the pathway of neuropathy, look at the next one down. It looks like something's been taking bites out of that myelin sheath. It looks bad. The blood vessels are becoming fewer and far between. And keep in mind that these capillaries along these tiny nerves are so small that the microscopic red blood cells have to go through single file. These are tiny little structures, and they're more delicate than we would expect. So as the damage continues, we go to the next nerve down, and then all the way down there, this bottom nerve may have absolutely no sensitivity left in it at all. And then it's anybody's guess at how much of that we can restore. So if we can catch it in the second to worst one all the way up, we can expect a full or near full recovery to those nerves. So that's what's really happening in just about any cause of neuropathy. This sequence is happening. So it looks to me to be pretty basic on how we address it. And there it is. It's a 3-legged stool. To reverse neuropathy, we've just got to do these 3 things. We've got the metabolic system, we've got the neurologic system, and we've got the vascular system. So the metabolic system is usually when I start with the patients to help them. And I'll let them know, look, here's what we've got to do. If we're going to take this metabolic system, which really is the fancy word for how your tissues are responding, how they're functioning, how all the processes are going, how is your body repairing itself and healing? We know when someone has neuropathy that 2 things are existent. We know that they have systemic or cellular inflammation going on. Systemic and cellular inflammation, they're at the heart of every one of these chronic diseases. And it can be Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease, neuropathy. We know we have too much inflammation in the body, and it doesn't take a genius in America to figure that out. The diet, the standard American diet is SAD. That's the acronym, SAD. And it's difficult for people to get that. So metabolic has to do, and I tell them it has to do with what you put into your pie hole and what you don't put into your pie hole. And we've got to get ahead of the damage that's being done in your feet. Your body's trying to repair all this damage, but you're not able to get ahead of it. That's what we've got to do. So the next leg, neurologic, and then vascular. So here it is. Here's the part that people hate the very most about this whole program, and that is you've got to change. You've got to change the way you live. You go to the grocery store, you see what's in people's grocery carts. You know that most of the people shop in the middle of the grocery store. Most of their diet consists of highly processed foods. They're laden with sugar. They're laden with chemicals. Most of them taste really great, and it's easy to consume those. It's easy to prepare those. Almost nobody, it seems, knows how to cook anymore. So refined carbohydrates and sugars are a huge offender. Artificial sweeteners, bad fats. We don't try and have them memorize every fat in the world. And I know that there's MCT and SCTOs and those kinds of things, but we just try and get our people to understand that if you put in your house olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil, you're going to not have to worry about how much oil you eat. It's all a healing for you. So you can just go to town and cook your foods and eat those and not worry about them. Processed meats, all of the chemicals that are in there, high sodium foods, that goes along with that. Alcohol, gluten is a big one. And I will tell my people, I want them off all processed grains if possible. Do your best. Those are some of the most basics. And of course, alcohol and smoking is a big one. Here in Utah, a lot of people don't drink and don't smoke, so it's not nearly as often an issue. So there's some things on the sides, white pastas, cakes, pies. You have to tell people this because you'll look at the sign on the left and they'll go, yeah, I can do that. And then you go to the right and they go, wait, donuts? I can't have donuts. It's astounding what they are. So these are the things we try and avoid. Now, at some point, I want to talk about it. I don't know if it's going to be later on, and my time is short. So I just want you to know, here's one thing that's not in this original thing, this original presentation, is the idea of glycinated proteins. We know that the standard American diet is just pretty much simple carbohydrates. We eat those, they get to the liver. The liver can only process so much, so it can only store so much extra sugar in it. So the liver becomes glutted with sugar. It can't store anymore. So it's lots of sugar in the bloodstream. The liver will try and make it all into triglycerides and send that out, which isn't overly healthy either. That triglyceride will deposit in your pancreas, your skeletal muscle, the heart muscle. It'll also deposit in the liver. So you know that almost all of your type 2 diabetics have high triglycerides and fatty liver. But I want you to think just a second about all the extra carbohydrates, sugars floating through the bloodstream. A certain number of them will bond with a protein, and it's called a glycinated protein. And many of those glycinated proteins will attach to the nerve fibers themselves and begin to damage them. And then to make it one step further, the immune system sees that happening and says that's not right and begins to attack those glycinated proteins, further damaging the nerves. So sugar is a huge culprit, and that's the hardest thing for people to get rid of, hardest people to understand that it's hidden. So that takes a lot of work and help on your part. Now, you're going to have some patients that are right there already with you. Speed this up. What do we eat? Well, it doesn't take a genius to know what's healthy food. You eat fresh meats, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. You try and keep your fructose from those fruits under 10 grams a day, which is basically, an orange and a half an apple, something like that. But there are charts out there that show you how much fructose you can, what fruits you can eat to get that fructose. We eat the healthy oils, and we drink an awful lot of water. That is how we start the healing process. But that's not usually enough. What we've got to do is introduce the Neurox. Now, I don't know if I told the story before, and I know I'm talking too much. When I was going through this, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to end this neuropathy for myself, I realized that here's a bunch of stuff I needed, and I didn't have it, and I didn't want to try and find individual bottles. And I called Dr. Kim, is what I did. And I said, Dr. Kim, I'm in trouble. Will you make this product for me? If I send you what I need, will you work your magic and create, beyond what I understand, a better product? And he was sweet enough to, humor me. And then he created this Neurox. And I think that this is a tremendous product. We go through bottles and bottles and cases and boxes of this stuff. It's amazing. I want to show you. This is a thermal image of a foot. This is my foot. We do these thermal images in our office, and the thermal camera is not very expensive. The foot on the left Thermal imaging should show good, healthy blood flow, good, healthy heat patterns. Red and pink are the colors you want. My foot, before starting this program, orange, yellow, green, and blue toes. I was in misery. 10 weeks after I began with Neurox, and I might add, I was on the most ultra ridiculous hard diet that I have ever done. I was eating no breakfast, a piece of fish for lunch, one vegetable. No, it was ridiculous. And then the same kind of thing, only different items at dinner. And between the clean diet and the Neurox, this is what I was 10 weeks later. Look at all the changes in my toes. Now they're just blue. I mean, just yellow, blue's gone. And then at the end, my feet were back to being normal, red, healthy feet. So I want you to know that the Neurox stuff that you have available to you is powerful, and we use it a ton. Now, so this is how we do it in our clinic. Every Tuesday at 1 and at 4, we have a seminar. People are invited to come in, and we roll out the red carpet, and we let them have Diet Coke if they want. We got plenty of time to tell them that's poison. We have snacks, and we give a little seminar to them. We had a fella come through, and at the end of that, we give them a copy of our book, and we offer them an opportunity to meet with us one-on-one to see if they're the right candidate for us to work with them. We had a guy come in. We were really impressed. He was doing a lot of things well. He was on the right track, but he was missing the boat. So we made some recommendations to him. And this is just 2 weeks later, he came back into the office with a bunch of papers, and he asked to meet with both of us. I have a partner, Dr. Eric Cipriano. He said, can I meet with you two? And please don't be mad. And now I'm thinking, what in the world could, anyway. Sit down. He said, I didn't tell you before, I'm a podiatrist. And I've been trying for years to get my neuropathy under control, and I've not been able to do it. Look at what you guys have done in just 2 weeks. Tweaking what he was already doing and adding, the other thing we did additionally was got him on Uricmin. And so his name's Brian, and he did really great. So he had already called Dr. Brent, and we told him, don't lie to us anymore. You don't have to hide it. But there we were. And so we do in our office. It's kind of funny. We treat the medical personnel. Some of the videos that I could have shown you, they are retired medical personnel. One of them has a wife that's a nurse practitioner still practicing. But we treat the chiropractors in town. We treat the podiatrists in town. Those who are serious with their own neuropathy, they end up here. And we're very proud of that. Great. Thanks for letting me have an opportunity. It gets a little boring when I'm the only one talking and staring at the camera. So show up to the in-person one. They're way better.